All right, we will go ahead and get started. We'll pass the screen over to Greg Turan. Greg?
Yes. All right, okay, we'll go ahead and start. Thank you everybody for being on today. Want to welcome you to the FY2020 Adult Drug Court and Veteran Treatment Court Discretionary Grant Program. This is the for solicitation updates. Most of you might be aware, we originally posted this solicitation on February 24th and decided to make some modifications to the solicitation to ensure that BJA was doing its best job to make sure that we had providing applicants the greatest opportunity to apply for this BJA funding. As many of you may know, throughout the years or past several years, the funding for drug court program has continued to rise. As you know, we have, and maybe not know, we have two different pots of funds for the discretionary grant program, both for adult drug courts as well as for veteran treatment courts. So I'll get started with today's solicitation webinar. Okay, for today's agenda, we'll be going over some of the dates changes within the solicitation, adjustments to the grant categories, within each of the categories, what's now allowable. Then we'll go over some resources for this grant application, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A. Again, guys, really what we're going to be focusing on the modifications to the solicitation for today's webinar. As you know, again, this was reissued on April 7th. I think that was Tuesday of last week. Now we have a new close date of June 1st, 2020. This has been extended for 2 weeks. Initially, when you saw the first solicitation, we had the solicitation open for 90 days, which is a lot longer than normal. Now with the reissue of April 7th, with a close date of June 1st, this solicitation is going to be open a little over 50 days, which is pretty typical for our BJA solicitation. So even with this change, it's still the same amount of time as each other year that we have our solicitations out. So going into the different grant categories. So on page 5 of the solicitation, you'll see this information. You'll see in category 1, we're focusing on implementation of veteran treatment courts, grant maximum $500,000, and that $500,000 is over 36 months. Category 2 is titled Veterans Treatment Courts, grant maximum $500,000, and again, $500,000 over the 36 months. Category 3, adult drug courts, and that maximum was $500,000 over 36 months. And then category 4, statewide strategies to support adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts, grant maximum $750,000, period of performance is 36 months. And again, you can see from the previous solicitation, this one, now we have 4 categories. And category 1 and 2 primarily focus on veteran treatment courts. So in terms of allowable use of funds for category 1, implementation of veteran treatment courts, again, this really focuses on implementation of new veteran treatment courts. Funding can be used for core capacity, building up your program, case management, judicial supervision, sanction incentive services, any type of services you need to build up a new veteran treatment court. Funding allows you to do that. And again, what you see in front of you is not, you're not limited to, this is not limited to allowable use of funds for this category, but this gives you more of a general in terms of what you can use funding for, as well as when you're developing your application, you're going to be looking at these allowable funding activities depending on what you're looking to do in terms of designing your new veteran treatment court. So it may only be one of these. You may be looking to support judicial supervision, or you may also be wanting to hire a case manager in your program. It just depends on what you're submitting with your application. And this is found on page 6 of solicitation. Category 2, titled Veteran Treatment Courts. So this is focusing on enhancing existing VTCs, and you're able to use this funding to scale up your VTC program capacity, provide access to treatment, enhance corporate operations, and expand court services, as well as improve the quality or intensity of court-based or needs assessments within your VTC. So we have category 3, adult drug courts, can be found on page 7 of the solicitation. This really focuses on both the implementation of new drug courts and enhancing an already adult drug court that you already have. So this is different from the previous solicitation, where this now incorporates both implementation or launching a new adult drug court, as well as expanding or enhancing an adult drug court. Funding can be used to launch or implementation plans to operate a new drug court, meaning that if you have plans to operate or start a new drug court, obviously you can use the funds to do that. You can scale up program capacity, provide access or enhancement of treatment capacity, enhance court services, all the other different activities you can do for both implementation as well as enhancement, all tied into Category 3 adult drug courts. So Category 4, again, we now have 4 categories: statewide strategies to support adult drug courts, as well as VTCs. This is located on page 8 of the solicitation. This allows you to do both launch implementation plans as well as scale up or enhance drug court or better treatment court services statewide. You can expand treatment services throughout the state. You can conduct audits of practice and technical assistance adhering to the best practice standards. You can use it to collect data collection as well as analysis to assess practice and track recidivism, as well as look at expanding or developing or expanding state level TTA or training technical assistance. So what's revised in terms of eligibility? We revised it for eligibility funding for categories 1 through 3. So what we did, if you're familiar with our solicitation in the past, you'll see for enhancement, we use the language fully operational for at least 1 year. We revised that to indicate that you are ready to fully implement a drug court. What that means is that jurisdictions has completed a substantial amount of planning and is ready to implement an evidence-based adult drug court program. So that language has been changed. Okay, so revised eligibility, some of the things that we changed under the solicitation, we only allow one entity may serve as the primary applicant. So how that has changed, I've received a lot of questions, is asking if we could have 2 jurisdictions apply for one application. What this means is that when you're applying, only one entity can serve as the primary applicant, and the other one has to be proposed as a subrecipient or subgrantee within that application. Also, we've received questions on how many applications can we submit. So there's really no limit on the number of applications you can submit, or entity or jurisdiction can submit, but you have to ensure that the application you're submitting is different. You can't submit the same application for, let's say you're in Greenville drug court program and you apply for 2 drug courts. You can't have them fund the exact same thing. So the purpose of this language is really to make sure there's no duplicate of funding of a particular drug court. BJA also works with SAMHSA to ensure that there's no duplication of funding as well. When SAMHSA gets an application, it's received. If it's serving a certain county and then we see that same application come into BJS, we both look at those applications and make sure that it's serving maybe a different court type, or it's a different population, or it's different services. You may apply for an award or apply for to utilize MAT with their grant, and then your grant with us from the same section may be applying to hire a case manager. We read through those applications and make sure there's no duplication of funding. And that's the primary reason for that language within the solicitation. Okay, in terms of resources for applicants to be able to utilize, you can go to the National Drug Court Resource Center at the web link in front of you, to www.ndcrc. There's many different grant resources on that website. There's examples of program narratives or successful program narratives, NADC best practices, 10 key components of VTCs, as well as tribal illness to wellness courts. When you get to that website, this is what you'll see. This is the site under practical resources, and under grant writing resources, you'll get a chance to see this. It may be a little hard for you guys to see. Some of the writing is a little small, and cut and pasting it on here. But also in here, you'll also we'll be posting the frequently asked questions that was recently asked from the previous solicitation webinar, and maybe updating it also to include some of the questions for today if there are many more different from the ones from the previous solicitation webinar. So right now we'll open it up for Q&A. Again, today was really wanting to provide you guys with what the modifications to the previous solicitation was, and then to allow you to be able to ask questions as relates to the modifications to the previous solicitation. So I want to turn it back over to NDCRC to see if there's any questions that was posed during the time I was presenting.
Yes, thank you, Greg. This is Kristen Duvall with the National Drug Court Resource Center. We do have a couple questions that have come in. The first one is, with the 4 new categories, if we were going to combine requests to support a DTC and a VTC in the same county, can we still do that? Have one program apply as a grantee?
Yep, you can submit one application indicating that you're looking to either start or expand a VTC or start or expand an adult drug court. I do want to make you aware, though, if, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the webinar, if any of the 2 that you're looking to expand or enhance or implement or launch, if one of them is a BTC, since there are 2 pockets of money, you do need to indicate within the solicitation the percentage of the BTC that will be needed with the total funding.
Okay, great. The second question, what entities are allowed to hold any grant money that may be awarded?
So the eligibility is indicated on the first page of the solicitation. So there's 4 categories, 1 through 3. There's state and local drug court, state agencies, and for category 4 for statewide, those only could be for state agencies, or states can only apply for those.
Okay. And then the third question, is the new solicitation with new grant categories available?
Yes, you can find that on the BJA website. You can go on to, you can Google BJA 2020 drug court solicitation, and it'll come up where you're able to pull up the solicitation.
All right, next question. Can you do a new drug court and a new veterans court?
Yes, and you can do both of those within one application.
Okay. Next question. It is my understanding that previously, if we had a drug court, we would need to do enhancement category to start a new veterans court. Is it now that we need to apply for a new veterans court if we have a drug court already under category 1?
So with the new language, one of the things I talked about in the new language is that now you would be done with the term operational. So if you demonstrate or demonstrate within your application that you're ready to implement either a new adult drug or veteran treatment court, you can do that. You just need to document that or indicate that in your application that you put enough planning in place to be able to launch a new adult drug or a veteran treatment court.
Okay. Next question. Can category 3 be used to start a new DUI court?
Yes. So within the solicitation on, I can't remember that exact page, but for adult drug courts, it consists of adult drug courts, it consists of DUI, DWI, DUI courts, co-occurring courts. So a number of different courts fall into the type of courts that you can apply under the solicitation. So yes, they would be able to apply. Okay.
Then there was another question about, can we put up the resources slide again? We can definitely do that. The next question, if our court began in January of 2019, but we attended the NDCI training in June, could we still submit as an implementation grant?
Yeah, yes. They submit as an implementation. implementation, the new language in there pretty much states that you've done a substantial amount of planning and they're ready to launch or implement a new adult drug court or better treatment court.
Okay. Actually, Greg, can you repeat that? It was a little garbled.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the new language with the solicitation indicates if you're looking to start a new court, then you need to do is document in the application that you've done a substantial amount of planning to be able to launch your court, new adult drug better treatment court.
Okay. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. It's just really garbled. So it sounds like the answer to that question is yes.
Yeah.
That if they've done yes.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Okay. I'll try to repeat that. So if I remember exactly, can you repeat the question again? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Well, yeah, it's a little bit garbled. I can repeat the question if you'd like. If our court began in January of 2019, but we attended the NDCI training in June, could we still submit as an implementation grant?
Yes, you do. Implementation, yes.
Okay, so the answer to that question is yes. But Greg,
yes.
I don't know if you might want to maybe try calling back in because it's a little bit garbled. Yeah, we can't hear you if you're. Yeah, it's still really garbled. While we wait for Greg, we'll put the resources slide up again so that folks can see the resources page. You should be able to see that. So as Greg mentioned, there are example project narrative files as well as some templates for each one of the categories on the ndcrc.org website. So the requirements for the project narrative file document for each one of the categories is available. And we will make these slides as well as a recording of this webinar available within the next day or so. Thank you for your patience. We're just waiting for Greg to call back in, and we'll continue with our Q&A.
Okay, this is Greg. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Greg, that's clear.
Okay. All right, good. So I'm back on. Hopefully there's no sound. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. If you have a current implementation grant, can you apply for funds to expand and enhance?
If you currently have an implementation or an enhancement grant, you would be able to apply for a new one. But if that grant or that grant is currently active, if it's active and you're looking to applying for the same drug court activities within that grant, you wouldn't be able to do that. But if you have an adult drug court you already have or implementation grant, and if you were looking to expand services to do a different type of service with, hopefully that makes sense. So what I'm saying is if you have an active grant, you would be able to apply for a new one as long as you're applying for different services. If your current grant is supporting MAT and you want to expand some more services with that current award, you would need to be focusing on a different aspect of that award. It may be that you're looking to hire a case manager or do some aspect of MAT again. So.
Okay. Does this grant allow for pass-through funding?
Yes. That's where we come into the part where it has the grantee awards, specifically around the statewide category as well. In recent years, under the category 4, we didn't have category 4 in the past, but we did have a statewide category. So applicants who apply under that are able to continue to do what they were doing in the past, supporting adult drug courts or veteran treatment courts in their state.
Great. Are adult mental health courts eligible for this grant?
No, this is only primarily for those that are located in the solicitation. Again, co-occurring courts, DWI, DUI courts, adult drug courts, veteran treatment courts. Fund.
Greg, I think we're losing you again. I heard the first part of the answer, but not the second.
So no, this funding, hopefully you can hear me, this funding does not support mental health courts. It do fund, when you look at the solicitation, and I don't have the solicitation right in front of me right now, but we do list the type of courts that this solicitation does support, and mental health court is not one of the type of courts.
Okay. Next question. If we applied for SAMHSA adult drug court funding, can we still apply for BJA adult drug court funding and just notify BJA of our pending SAMHSA application?
Yes, you can do that. Yes.
Okay.
I just want to make them aware, though, if they do that, if they do apply for a SAMHSA, we do require that they make notification within our application, primarily the abstract, indicating that they have submitted an application with SAMHSA. And if it's for the same thing, obviously, if they get the SAMHSA award first, then we wouldn't be funding them. Yeah, but they are able to do that, yes.
Okay. The next question, are there projections made as to how many awards will be made in each category? And are there priorities in each category?
Yeah, so we plan to make up to 96 awards. We look to make between 20 to 25 awards for veteran treatment courts. Around, and I'm just putting my math out there, we're looking to make around 50 adult drug court awards and close to maybe 20 statewide grants. So we're really putting a lot of prioritizing veteran treatment courts as well as statewide awards this year. But depending on what applications we receive, we'll be making awards based off what we do receive.
Okay. And then
in terms of priority areas, within the solicitation, it talks about the 3 different priorities or OJP priority areas, one being rural communities, one being high poverty communities, as well as quality opportunity zones. We also have a focus or priority to supporting veterans, so veteran treatment court services, the veteran treatment court program. And again, rural communities has always been a high priority for these BJA grants, as well as supporting tribal communities. Also, another priority is also working with law enforcement and supporting your law enforcement, or having some type of connection of having law enforcement work with your adult drug court or veteran treatment court program.
Okay. The next is, what are the reporting requirements?
Okay. Well, that information is indicated in the solicitation, so there's quarterly reporting as it relates to performance measures, and that information is identified in the solicitation. Okay. So you can look up the performance measures and you'll see what is required for that reporting.
Okay. Another question. Under the Program Design and Implementation section for Category 3, you have added that we provide a description for the court process. This is also asked for in the problem statement. In the design section, do you only want us to address the court processes that will be impacted by the proposal?
Yes. What will be impacted by a proposal and program design? Yes.
Okay. If you have submitted your application for drug court and it has not been approved, can you still apply?
Okay, so if they submitted an application that hasn't been approved, I'm not quite sure I understand. So if they submitted an application for this year, or?
I'm wondering if that means their application for a drug court may be from their state?
Well, they would. Well, this solicitation is still out. So, if they sent the application, and I'm not quite sure if they're talking, because we wouldn't have had any applications come in yet this year, or not come this year, but we wouldn't already be processing the applications yet, because we're still this solicitation is still open. So I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that person can follow up. Does this include the Veterans Diversion Program in New Jersey?
No, this is BJA's Adult Drug Court and Veteran Treatment Court Discretionary Grant Program, which is open to the public to apply based off your eligibility requirements. So I'm not familiar with the New Jersey Veterans Program. This is a federal government discretionary grant program through BJA that supports adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts.
Okay. With the extended due date to June 1st, will that change the award date of October 1, and what date will the awards be announced?
No, that doesn't change the award date.
Okay. Has incentives and sanctions been added to the implementation grant? I'm assuming that may mean, can you ask?
Yeah, you can, yep, that was in, when I went over the slides. I'm sorry, I can't get in front of my computer, because if I stand in front of my computer to look at the slides, and I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys. I'm sorry, I'm standing in the corner of my house trying to respond to these calls. I'm sorry. Yeah, for implementation of veteran treatment courts, we do allow for you to expand service or use funding to support incentives and sanctions, yes.
Okay. Under program design and implementation for adult drug courts category 3, you have a bullet asking for information that references Veterans Court in the language. Do adult drug courts need to address this bullet?
For adult drug courts category 3, it really is focusing on adult drug courts, what falls within adult drug courts. If you're applying for veteran treatment courts, both implementation and enhancement, implementation would be category 1, and category 2 would be for enhancement in category 2 for VTCs. Category 3 is primarily adult drug courts.
Okay. If you're asking for a grant for a new veterans court and a new drug court for the same jurisdiction, does it have to be one application, or can it be two since they are different categories?
It could be one application. We recommend that you do one application. So you would be applying for one application for both the implementation of the adult and veteran treatment court.
Okay. Can you explain the overlap with SAMHSA again and the limitations there? I think that might have been.
Okay, the overlap with, yeah, so the whole point of ensuring that SAMHSA, BJA deconflicts with SAMHSA to ensure that we're not duplicating funding. So what that means is, if you already have a federal drug court grant, either through SAMHSA or through BJA, and you're applying this year to do the same exact services within their grant or our grant, that would not get funding. But if you're looking to serve a different court population or request a different type of court, so your current application or your current award either with SAMHSA or with BJA is serving veteran treatment courts, and you're looking to apply this year to do an adult drug court or DWI court, then that's okay, because those are two different types of courts, or you're serving two different types of populations. the really goal of that language is to ensure that your drug court that you're receiving funding from SAMHSA is not the exact same thing that you're applying for BJA. So we're making sure there's no duplicate of our funding. The thing with that also, though, is, and the language is in the solicitation, is that if that grant, their active grant ends prior to the start of this grant, then you would be able to do that because you wouldn't have two of the same active grants.
Okay. Can you still apply for a co-occurring court application under the new eligibility guidelines?
Yes. Yep, that's still a court type that you can apply for.
Okay. Do you have to have training before you apply?
No, you don't have to have training before you apply to a drug court grant. No.
Okay. This questioner, we have an existing drug treatment court that has already applied for BJA enhancement funds. Do we need to submit another application for VTC implementation?
Well, if they submit it within this application period, if they are, when they go through the grant process, they would be able to go back in and resubmit their application, including the VTC. They would be able to include it in their current application because the application process has not closed. Okay. If they already apply within this, while this application process is open, they can still go in the system and include veteran treatment courts as part of this application.
Okay.
They won't be able to change it until June 1st when it closes. Then they can't make any more modifications to their current application.
Okay. So anybody that submitted an application can go in now and make changes to that application until June 1st?
They can make changes to the application, yes.
Okay, great. Another question, is there a BJA TTA provider for this grant? And if so, is it the same organization as previous 2018 and 2019 grants?
So with our TTA student drug court program, we have 4 TTA providers, one being the Center for Court Innovation, who is a TTA provider for our statewide category. That serves as our TTA provider. It provides TTA to both enhancement and expansion of adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts. And then we have a partnership or our TTA provider with the Tribal Law and Policy Institute, who serves as the TTA provider for our tribal healing and wellness courts. And then we have NDCRC through the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, who is coordinating this call today, is our Resource Center partnership. So those are the 4 TTA providers we have.
Great. Next question, how long would a court have to be in existence to still be able to apply for implementation funds?
So again, I'm glad they asked that because that's a part of the new eligibility language that I went over earlier, is that you just need to be able to demonstrate that you put a substantial amount of planning and you are ready to implement or enhance a drug court or veteran treatment court. So again, that was doing away with the previous language saying that you had to be operational for at least a year prior to the start date of this award. That language no longer exists.
Okay. All right. Can we put the references for the narrative in a separate attachment, or do they have to be included in the 20-page limit for the project narrative file?
Separate attachment.
Okay. Another question, is the COSAP solicitation going to be extended as well? I don't know if you can answer that, Greg, if you know.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know, you would have to go back on the BJA website and check that. And there's a way, I believe, you can go on the website and check any updates, but I would advise to go on Twitter or Facebook through BJA so that you're able to sign up for any new updates regarding our solicitations.
Okay. Are the modifications to the original solicitation discussed anywhere, or would we need to read the whole solicitation to identify additional modifications?
When you go to the solicitation, the modifications are going to be as it relates to the categories on the first page of the updated solicitation. So you'll see the 4 new categories listed on there. That's as far as that we would have showing the difference between the solicitations. And you could probably look at, well, no, I wouldn't say that. No, yeah, you just go to the current solicitation. You'll see on the first page the modifications.
Okay. What is the difference between statewide and regular drug court?
So for a regular drug court, for those were category 1 through 3. So eligible applicants are again local government, state government, tribal tribes can apply for those. For category 4 statewide, those can only be applied by a state agency or state entity.
Okay. And then can you clarify the definition of supplanting?
Yeah, supplanting would be, and I believe that's defined within the solicitation. That would be you using money, and I don't want to get this wrong. I would probably refer more to our program staff who deal directly with the different levels of how you're able to utilize funding. We do have a FAQ that speaks to that. Again, I'm not in front of my computer to be able to respond to that to you right now, because I want to be very sensitive to the response to that, because we get a number of different questions related to supplanting and matches and things of that nature. So I want to make sure I give the best answer I can. I would suggest that person send me an email, or after this call, we'll have our FAQs up to be able to respond to that. But okay.
Does an evaluator have to be independent of our organization, or can it be a current drug court employee?
Because I say I don't believe we have language that speaks to either. So I believe it will be up to the applicant to identify who they hire as their evaluator.
Okay. Can we apply for an existing adult drug court this year and apply for a new veterans court next year while still under the adult grant?
Yes. And that falls into what I described earlier, is that you would be applying. There are 2 different drug court types, so there wouldn't be any duplicate of funding.
Okay. This question is coming from Louisiana. In 2017, Louisiana extended eligibility to enroll in drug court to offenders of violent crime in certain circumstances. Can grant funding be used for these clients or only nonviolent offenders?
For this grant, so we have within both for adult drug courts or any type of adult drug courts that, again, that's DWI, DUI, tribal illness, wellness courts, we prohibit you to apply using BJA funds or federal funds for violent offenders. The exception is with veteran treatment courts. So if you apply under Type B, I believe it is, for veteran treatment courts, you can serve those charged with a violent offense. We also have new language within the solicitation. Again, I'm sorry, I can't look directly at it and to tell you what page it's on within the solicitation, but that language indicates that if you do have a separate pot of funds that are not BJA funds and you're looking to serve violent offenders, you may be able to do that, but you must be able to demonstrate that you are not, you must be able to show that there's a separation of funds. If that's what you choose to serve violent offenders, it can't be used, or you can't use BJA funds for violent offenders, again, except for veteran treatment courts funding.
Yes, and that language is on page 5 and 6 of the solicitation, in case anybody's
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
We are a very small rural jurisdiction that does not have the population to support a standalone VTC, but we do plan to serve veterans in our drug court when necessary. Should that be clarified or highlighted in our proposal?
Yeah, so again, one of the things we have in for this this the solicitation, we have those 3 OJP priority areas, and one of them is rural communities. So if you follow the directions within the solicitation in terms of talking about, you're describing your community as being rural, you will receive extra points within your application for that. But yes, definitely describe that within your application that you're serving rural communities as well as veterans. Again, veterans is a high priority area that we're looking to fund this year as well.
Okay. Do you have to have completed the NDCI training in order to apply?
No, you don't have to receive any training to apply.
Okay. So it looks like we have a clarification question from earlier. If you submitted an application for your state and it has not yet been approved, can you still apply?
Yes, but you need to, obviously indicate in the application that you did apply for funding in the abstract, so that we'll know that once we get your application, we'll be talking with you to see whether you got that funding or not, just again to make sure there's no duplication of funding, and that the funding for this award is not doing the exact same thing as the funding you're getting from the state.
Okay. Next question, the Veterans Diversion Program is a veterans court. The difference is that it's run by a prosecutor's office and not the court. We do have court appearances once okay, so this is a clarification question, I'm sorry, about the program in New Jersey, the Veterans Diversion Program in New Jersey.
Yeah, if they're looking to apply, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but if they're looking to apply for Veteran Treatment Court funding, they would just need to look at the eligibility requirements to see if they are eligible, they're eligible to apply.
Okay. If you were to apply for funding for established DUI, ADC, and VTC, what category would it fall in? So it looks like they're looking to establish a DUI, adult drug court, and a veterans treatment court. So what they're asking, what category would that fall into?
So they would, that's an interesting question because the way we have it split up. So they would have to apply under adult drug court, but within the adult drug court category, I'm assuming these are I don't know if they would be new or not. So if these are, so if they're applying to expand those different type of courts, then they would need to apply under adult drug court. But within the adult drug court, they need to indicate veteran treatment court, that they'll be funding veteran treatment court, and the amount of funding that will be going to the veteran treatment court.
Great. Under category 4, can one state agency be the applicant and a different state agency be the applicant for categories 1 through 3? And then
yes,
a follow-up.
yes. So there.
Sorry, go ahead.
If there's an agency indicated within the solicitation, when you look at that first page, we have who is eligible in terms of state agency. So yes, 2 state agencies would be applied as long as they're eligible applicants. So yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. They would both be able to apply.
Okay. And then a follow-up to that, can the same state agency be the applicant for category 4 as well as categories 1 through 3?
Yes.
Okay. So
the states are eligible for categories 1, 2, and 3 as well.
Okay. This is a clarification question. If we have a drug court but want to start a veterans treatment court, what category do we apply for?
They would apply for a veteran treatment court. Depending if they're looking to launch one, then they would be applying for category 1, which would be veteran treatment court implementation. Yeah, they would apply for veterans. If they're looking to start or expand their veteran treatment court and they already have an existing, they would be applying either category 1 or 2 for a veteran treatment court.
Okay. Next question. They mentioned a Native American grant would receive a priority. How does that get implemented? I think the question might be under what category would a tribal wellness courts would fall under either category 1 through 3, 1, 2, or 3.
Tribal Illness and Wellness Court comply under those 3 categories.
Okay. And then can you just restate the TTA providers? Again, it looks like that was during the breakup in your voice.
Okay, so we have 4 TTA providers. We have the Center for Court Innovation, who does our state-based TTA. We have NADCP, National Association of Drug Court Professionals, that provide our site-based TTA. Then we have our site bases that they go on and do individual drug court TTA. Then we have the Tribal Law and Policy Institute, TLPI, that provides our tribal specific TTA. And then we have UNCW, University of North Carolina, Wilmington, who provides the National Drug Court Resource Center, who also is facilitating today's call.
Okay. And then this is a clarification question. If you're making an application for Category 1 and then another application for Category 3 in the same application, you're applying for $1 million total. Is that correct?
Well, if you're applying for to start or launch a new Veterans Treatment Court and apply for adult drug court, you would indicate the both categories, but you would have to indicate within the solicitation what 2 levels of funding, but it would be for the max amount for one application, which would be the $500,000 over 36 months.
Okay. All right. And next question, can rural challenges be a separate attachment? Is a reference sheet needed? So I believe that's the justification document for satisfying the rural priority.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I might get. So within the program narrative, you would be indicating what priority, and that would be listed in the prior narrative. You would put that in the program narrative.
Okay. If applying for implementation of VTC and enhancement for existing adult treatment court under Category 3, do we still have the 20-page limitation for the program narrative?
Yes. It's still one application would be the 20-page narrative.
Okay. And then is the match still 25%?
Yes.
Okay. Is the cost of software that manages evidence-based practices in adult drug court eligible for funding?
Yes, that would be. If it's tied into the overall goal of your drug court or veteran treatment court program, then that's an allowable cost.
Okay. Can you use these funds for equipment? For example, color coding systems, computers?
Yes. Yes, you would be able to use that to buy equipment, but make sure you really read into what's allowable, what's not allowable, for not within each section of the category, but we do have a section that goes through what you can spend funds for. It's our federal government. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at I'm kind of have my hands behind my back a little bit because I can't stand by my computer if you guys will be able to hear me. But there is a link to the federal government grant book that talks about what's not allowable to use. But we do allow for a certain amount of funding with the grant to be able to purchase computers or equipment to support the work you indicate or support the goal of your application to support your drug court program.
Okay.
I want to keep in mind too, when you guys are looking at the solicitation, be very careful to look at when you're looking at the program narrative, each section of the program narrative has a certain amount of points. One section may have 40 points, one may have 20, one may have 30. The budget aspect has 5 points to it. So just make sure when you're submitting or you working on your application, put most of your effort to the heaviest weighted sections of the solicitation or program narrative.
Okay. All right. If you were to apply for funding for established DUI, ADC, expanding DUI, ADC, and VTC, what category would it fall in? That's a clarification.
Apply under the adult drug court category 3.
Okay. Can you re-explain category 4?
Okay. Category 4 is the statewide strategies to support adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts, and that funding can be used to both launch or start new adult drug courts or veteran treatment courts in your state, and or support statewide adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts, and or expand treatment services or drug court related services in your state. Again, the applicant would be a state agency, and you're submitting an application indicating how you're looking to either start a veteran treatment court in a certain part of your county or your state, or you're looking to expand treatment services throughout the state, or you're looking to implement, your state looking to implement evidence-based practices throughout the state, or the state is looking to use funding through BJA to do a statewide drug court conference. Funding can be used for a variety of different ways, but that's against the state agency would be applying, and it's looking to expand drug court or veteran treatment court services statewide.
Okay. And there's another follow-up question about the tribal healing to wellness courts. If Native American grants or rural grants are prioritized, how does that get, I think what they're wanting to know is how does that get scored on the project narrative? Do they get additional points? If so, how are they applied? Is this done through the review committee or by staff?
It's done. So we do have the section for rural communities as the 3 priorities, OJP priorities. So that they would indicate that in that section. And then by them indicating that they're a tribal community, one of the things that we look at to ensure that we are supporting a variety of locations throughout the state. We're looking at where there's need that's not being serviced throughout the different areas of our country. We're looking at supporting tribes as a high priority for this current administration. We're looking at those different things come into some of the decisions as it relates to also the peer review process. What are the applications being scored at? And then we look at also what are the needs statewide. Where are we not having our resources, or where at throughout our country that we don't have drug courts or veteran treatment courts or tribal courts receiving grants and funds. So it's a number of different things that is looked at during the peer review process, as well as once we receive those scores back from the peer review process, looking at how we best support those areas of need.
Okay. Looks like we have 3 more questions. One, can you provide an example of why a veterans treatment court and a drug treatment court in the same jurisdiction would apply on the same application with the VTC applying as a subgrantee? It says earlier it was, go ahead.
Okay. Now that we've adjusted the categories where there's, so if there, now that I'm looking at this may be something that I have to take back, because I'm seeing that because it may limit the applicant if they're looking to apply. Before it was, the categories were a little bit different, but if you're looking to apply for both an adult drug court and a veteran treatment court, normally we would have you submit one application in that process. But in this situation, it may be more beneficial for the applicant to submit 2 separate applications, primarily because they would be able to submit for the maximum amount of the $500,000, and then it will be since the categories are split, you have an adult drug court category itself, then they would be able to submit 2 separate applications with the 2 separate categories.
Okay, great. And then clarification question about the requirement for budgeting to have up to 3 team members attend 2 conferences or trainings per year. Can this be any conference? So that would be state, regional.
Well, it would be if they're, it would obviously be ones that are approved by BJA. So once an applicant receives the award, they can consult with their program manager, the person who they'll have direct contact with on a day-to-day basis as needed to make budget modifications, things of that nature. They would have to go through them to identify what is an approved BJA training or conference.
Great. 2 more questions. If this person is saying, if I anticipate receiving funding from my state to establish a new drug court, are we still eligible to receive funds under this grant?
Well, if you submit the application and in your application you indicate what the funding for state will be, you could still apply for this. You could still be able to apply. Once we receive that award, we would make decisions based off if you're already receiving funding from the state to do the exact same thing, then most likely you wouldn't get funded the BJA grant because it would be the same.
Great. Okay. And here's the last question. Are there any differences in the type of additional attachments that are required depending on whether you apply as an implementation grant or an enhancement for the adult treatment court?
No, I believe all the attachments are pretty much the same.
Okay.
There's no difference in the attachments.
Okay. I believe that is all the questions that we have so far. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to type those in the Q&A. I'll wait 30 more seconds. Doesn't look like we're getting any additional questions in at this point. So we would like to thank everybody for attending the webinar today about the revised solicitation. Again, please note the grant writing resources on the ndcrc.org website. And please let us know if you have additional questions. Feel free to send those to us. We will be making a recording of the webinar available on the website. We'll also be sending that to all attendees, as well as making the PowerPoint slideshow available, and the Q&A. We'll be typing responses to all of those questions and making those available to folks as well. So we would like to thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and have a great afternoon.